Hello and welcome to this episode of the Star Wars Universe Podcast. Friends, this is an episode I've been really excited about because we're doing a couple of things. First of all, this is going to be the episode where we cover the last 4 episodes of Season 7 of the Clone Wars. As a number of you have pointed out, we actually somehow never released our episode on the last 2. It was recorded. I think it was up there for a while, but then it got deleted. Long story. But we've decided to get back together and record on all 4 of them. Because not only is it an amazing story arc, but it is fundamental for a character who we care a lot about, and we're going to be caring a lot more, Ahsoka Tano. So this episode is also part 1 of Road to Ahsoka, as we are going to go do things that get us ready for the hopefully amazing show that's going to be coming out in August, all about Ahsoka Tano. So I'm really excited about this. These are, I think, many people consider some of the best, if not flat out the best Star Wars that's out there. It's absolutely probably in my top 5 of story arcs or stories, or however you want to describe it. And I've got a great panel of guests for us as returning on many of these episodes, but especially who's with me for all of the coverage of the Clone Wars Season 7, Paul Hoppy. So they will be joining us, and also joining us is the superfan who was the first person to write in and express their displeasure that we did not have those Clone Wars episodes. And because of that, started a conversation that wound up volunteering her to be a regular host. And she's also going to be a regular host for us during the Ahsoka show because she's an Ahsoka cosplayer and an Ahsoka fanatic and just all over a mentally unbalanced person who really loves Star Wars like the rest of us. And that, of course, is Erin McGowan. So all that and more with myself, Paul Hoppy, a now annoyed Erin who's going to talk to me about her mental status. All of that right after a commercial break we have no control over. Because Jedi never, ever need therapy.
No.
Welcome back. I'm Matthew Fox, they, them pronouns. Friends, I am just so excited to be here. These are such great episodes. There's so much to talk about. It's going to be really hard to get into all of it in 85 minutes or whatever. But Paul, let me just start with you. How are you feeling about tonight?
Yeah, I just rewatched the last 2 episodes. I had watched the other 2 yesterday and then the other 8 of this season in the last couple weeks. Because I wanted to feel the context of the episodes, you know. And these last 4 episodes especially, I mean, the whole season's great, but the last 4 episodes, and even more so the last 2 episodes, to me are just the absolutely top tier of like non-Andor division. Although like maybe they're even that good, like, which, you know, I mean, they're just absolutely outstanding storytelling. And for me, for someone, I feel like, for someone who didn't enjoy the prequels, which I don't want to harp on, but I want to talk about kind of the way that these stories feel to different people, I think. For me, it kind of gave me a chance to actually enjoy maybe the most pivotal moment in, you know, the history of that galaxy that we really see in a story that I really enjoy, you know, to be able to have a story that I love that takes place at that time. And I imagine that having a story of this quality, the way it sits in, if you really love the prequels, then, I mean, I'm kind of like almost like jealous of like, you know, like if you already have this, it would be like if you made something like that. It's like Rogue One, actually. Like Rogue One adds to like A New Hope, right? So if you love A New Hope, it kind of sort of elevates that. And if you didn't love A New Hope, it's like, well, here's something that's around that time period that's like awesome and like actually more well done than A New Hope.
No, it's awesome. And let's hear it now from Erin, who jokes about mental health aside. I am just as, you know, obsessed and fanatical with all these kind of things. I love it. I just like teasing everybody. But Erin is a prequels fan, is a huge Ahsoka fan, is a Clones fan, though I don't think we get any close-up of clone butts, but that's a topic we can get into for sure. But Erin, I've done enough to make fun of you. Go ahead and talk about how you're feeling on these 4 episodes.
No, yeah, Paul, you're talking about how cool it must be to like be someone who loves the story and characters like already. Like I grew up with these characters. Like I was watching the last 2 episodes also today, and I was sitting on my couch, and I just got these like chills, like as it kind of. It was the very final shot of the series, basically. So it was panning in on that helmet with Darth Vader in the reflection. And I was like, oh my God. I was like, this is literally the culmination of like my favorite childhood TV show, period. Like my favorite TV show, period. Like, this is insane. Like, this is so good. Like, I'm exposing myself right now. This is only the second time I've watched these episodes because it was so traumatic and like emotionally draining the first time that I was just too scared to go back. Like, fair. That's how much it meant to me. Like, I was destroyed. Oh my God, Jesse's helmet, it all took me out. It was all so horrible in such a good way. It's like, I care so much and it hurts a lot. It's just such good storytelling.
Yeah, that last shot is like maybe the best shot in Star Wars. It's so, it feels like it sums everything up. It's got Ahsoka's face on the helmet, which represents the clones, and you've got Vader walking away carrying a blue lightsaber. Like, you know?
Yeah, it's of a figure who was not his child, but had a kind of like, you know, I'm the adult who's mentoring this child relationship.
Yeah.
And I kind of think hearing from both of you sums up just how powerful it is, because the fact that it can be both, for the person who loved the prequels, it's the perfect bridge, and for the person who didn't, because I'm definitely much more on Paul's side. Not that it's a conflict, but you know, but I have the same experience. As I was watching it again, particularly at the time that I've been going so deep into Rebels, it really, for me, it did so much to not only draw the connection for Anakin's story, because I have the same thing of I did really feel like Rise of the Sith fumbled the Anakin conversion. Like, it just didn't.
Revenge of the Sith.
It didn't hit. Yeah. Oh, yeah, whatever. Sorry. No, yeah, you're correct.
It felt appropriate to get it wrong, but yeah.
I mean, also fair. Also, but I'm not, I've been a prequel hater. I'm not that anymore.
Yeah. I don't mean deliberately. I just mean, you know,
yeah, I mean, no, that's my
with it. Well, maybe it's deliberate. I don't know. I know the whole Rise of the Skywalker, there was a lot of permutation.
ADHD, it's a thing. But so yeah, it 100% make that connection. And I do think for me, and again, I know this is heresy for some, and that is, again, I'm not hating. I'm just saying Hayden Christensen is just not my Anakin. Matt Latner is. And so hearing his voice being the one, and having that voice in my head as I'm then hearing all the stuff with, you know, hearing that moment of his fall and watching both Maul and Ahsoka react to it.
Yeah.
And so I thought that was brilliant. I thought there were so many little moments that, like, yes, this was made after Rebels, so in some ways it's like some of the best prequeling I've ever seen, because it doesn't do anything that changes Rebels the way we often feel happens with prequels, but it sets up and foreshadows in such a beautiful way the stuff that we know is going to happen in Rebels, both with individual lines, but also with character moments. So, yeah, there's just so much to talk about. And it's funny, Paul, because you said that you think that these four, and especially these last two, are just some of the best Star Wars that's ever been. I agree with you. I actually think, though, that, and for those who are following along but lost, I promise we will do a brief summary of the episodes. But I just want to say that it's funny to me because I do think that other than that last shot, the absolute best moment of all four episodes happens in the final minutes of the second episode. And that's now that I've seen it again, I think just flat out the best lightsaber duel we've ever seen in Star Wars.
Yes.
The fight between Maul and Ahsoka.
Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think Maul delivers a fantastic line just, I think, before that duel when they're alone in like the Mandalorian, I guess, throne room.
Yeah.
Something like, justice is merely the construct of the current power base. It is about to change.
Yeah.
Or like, and that base is about to change. And
I wrote that down.
That hits deep.
Like,
yeah.
That was Filoni's like, I got something to say right now.
Exactly.
So, all right, for those who are a little lost, let's do a quick plot summary. I'm going to do my best to get it. You all tell me what I missed.
Perfect.
So we start with what seems like kind of a basic but well done episode of the Clone Wars. Anakin and Obi-Wan are leading armies. Anakin commits a war crime by faking a surrender, and then it turns out that it's all a trap to get the tactical leader. It is specifically mentioned in Geneva Conventions that that's a war crime. Granted,
I think this is before the Geneva Conventions, yeah.
You know.
long time ago. Far
But it
away.
looks cool when he does it and is doing a droid, so there we go. But I do I mean, the fact that it is kind of ethically gray a little bit is very perfect for Anakin.
Right. It's Anakin doing Anakin things is how it starts.
Yeah, exactly. Which all work.
Making fun of Obi-Wan doing Obi-Wan things.
Yeah, exactly. So they fight a big battle, they win, it's great. And then their ship they find out that Ahsoka Tano is contacting them. And important, also, this is going to have spoilers for Ghost, for Rebels, where the main ship is the Ghost. So one of the things that gets mentioned is that this is coming in on a radio frequency with a code name Fulcrum, which we know is eventually the code that Ahsoka and then a later person will use when they are like funneling secret information to the Rebels. So knowing that this is kind of where Ahsoka gets it, and she gets it because it's an old code of Anakin's. It's just kind of a great little connection there. So it's Ahsoka, and she turns up with Bo-Katan, which, by the way, also having seen The Mandalorian, this also just gave me so many chills because it again shows how much they were paying attention to what so much. Now here, this was now here, instead of, Rebels came before this. But if you watch Mandalorian Season 3, so much of this is set up so beautifully by what happens here with Bo-Katan. But anyway, Bo-Katan and Ahsoka are here, and they want to take back... Well, they start by saying that they have found Darth Maul, and they want help taking him back, capturing him, or taking him out. And they convince Obi-Wan and Anakin to be a part of it. And eventually, though, it comes out that Bo-Katan is like, yeah, I want to capture him because he took over Mandalore. And so fighting him will also be helping me take back Mandalore. And she's clearly learned. This is the start of that whole journey that, again, is paid off in Mandalorian Season 3. Obi-Wan isn't thrilled when he hears this because he knows that he doesn't want the Republic. If the Jedi take a side, then they're getting involved in this war of neutrality, which... all the way back to the stuff with Bo-Katan's sister, Duchess Satine. There's so much. Anyway, I'm sorry. I'm trying not to hit you too much. But basically, Obi-Wan was in love with Bo-Katan's sister. The Republic couldn't get involved when there was a fight back then, and Maul killed her. All that emotion is there. And eventually they decide, and then further complicating matters, they get a warning that there's been an attack on Coruscant, which, of course, we know is the opening action of that third movie, Revenge of the Sith. I got it right. Suck eggs. So anyway, so we're trying to figure out what to do, and Anakin suggests, hey, wait a minute, Ahsoka could lead Republic troops. She's not a Jedi, so it wouldn't be the Jedi getting involved. Isn't that okay? And no one points out that it would still be half of a regiment of Republic troops, but we're going to move on from that. Obi-Wan's like, well, but they don't have to. They don't have to obey you. And of course, all the troops are fully ready to obey Ahsoka again. They're her she's their commander. And Rex comes and shows her that they have all painted their helmets with her face markings to kind of really show they're Ahsoka's boys. Beautiful moments with Rex and all that. So now we have the whole battle of the Siege of Mandalore, which has been referenced a couple times, but it's funny to realize that the Siege of Mandalore is not the Empire, it's the Republic forces and Ahsoka and all them laying siege to try and capture Maul and win back Mandalore. There's a lot of great fight scenes. The clone troopers suddenly know how to use jetpacks as well as the Mandalorians do. Ahsoka says to Rex at one point their ship is coming down in. They're both jumping out. I'll race you to the ground, and she beats him because Jedi are awesome.
Some things never change.
Some things never change. Lots and lots of fighting, lots and lots of Maul being Maul, and he starts telling them about how some big change is coming and something is happening. He gets Ahsoka alone, and he talks about how he's really disappointed because what he wanted was for Obi-Wan to come. First he says, who are you? I wanted Obi-Wan. And it's later revealed not only did he want Obi-Wan, he wanted Anakin. Because he starts to help Ahsoka put some pieces together, because he tells her about Darth Sidious and how Darth Sidious was in control of everything the whole time. I'm realizing I'm getting a couple details time-wise out of the way, but I'll kind of clear it up. that Darth Sidious has been in charge the whole time, that he's pulling all the strings. Obi-Wan hears this and mentions that, it's too bad because Count Dooku could have told us about Darth Sidious, but aw shucks, Anakin killed Dooku, which I got kind of a chill at that line because it remembers that like Sidious told him to kill Dooku. And so it's just this one little piece of like, they could have put more of the pieces together. But of course, Sidious stopped that from happening because he's really good at this. So we also hear that we also hear that Maul really wanted not only Obi-Wan to come, but Anakin. Because Maul has figured out that both him and Dooku were just placeholders, that Sidious has this whole plan where he's going to make Anakin his apprentice, and the two of them are going to remake the galaxy. And he doesn't really say exactly what that means, but he says, we're all going to die. It's all going to be terrible. And he tries to convince Ahsoka to join him to stop all this from happening. Ahsoka can't believe that Anakin would ever do that, rejects it. The two of them have this epic lightsaber duel, and for the third time, the second time, the third time is coming, Maul thinks he's about to win the fight when he loses the fight. And it's just one more moment of kind of that great synergy across those three. Synergy is the wrong word, but you know what I mean. Mm-hmm. And at the very end, he's falling. Ahsoka catches him, and he begs her to let him die. Because in his words, we're all going to die. So now we're into the last two episodes, stuff we hadn't really covered before. We open, I'll make this shorter because there's less that happens in these, though they're just as good. We're taking Maul back. He's been captured. Ahsoka refuses to listen to him. And then there's this incredibly powerful moment when, first of all, we actually see that Ahsoka was in the council meeting when the last kind of council meeting before the Jedi sent people off to go arrest Sidious. But she just misses Anakin. And so it's like they don't, and she wants to tell Anakin about what Sidious told her. She almost tells Obi-Wan, but decides not to, what Maul told her about Sidious. And then we get this incredibly powerful moment that we've referenced where both her and Maul kind of have that feeling in the Force that something's happening, and they hear that last conversation between Anakin and Maul and Sidious when Sidious and Maul are fighting, and, Maul winds his arm way back for no good reason, and
Mace.
Anakin cuts it off.
Yeah,
Mace
with the backswing.
I'm really bad at names, like I said. Don't smoke when you're pregnant, folks. It does bad things.
Oh, God.
It's a long story. I love my mother very, very much. Wow. She made some choices. But moving on. So anyway, and then of course Order 66 happens, and in such a harrowing moment, all the clones obey Order 66. So all these clones who are so devoted to Ahsoka are now trying to kill her. And she manages to fight them off because Ahsoka is much better at fighting clones than any of the Jedi Masters were. Put aside that editorial comment.
Just watch Tales of the Jedi, guys.
Yeah, they totally explain it in Tales of the Jedi.
Completely. And she manages to get Rex unconscious. She heard him talking about 5, so she does some research, which is really kind of nice because it's a nice payoff to how in the earlier season, 5 figured everything out, but it didn't matter.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And so here it does get to matter. She figures it out. She gets the clone out of the chip out of Rex's head so that he's able to help her. And then the two of them start fighting clones. And it's heartbreaking. He's killing his own men. He clearly doesn't want to. She gets him to stop killing and start shooting to stun. Although she keeps reflecting laser blasts back with her lightsaber and kill. But we're trying hard not to kill. But there's this epic fight, and along the way, she realizes that the best way to help keep the clones distracted is to release Maul. So she does, and in one of my absolute favorite moments from her, he says, like, well, you're going to give me a weapon or some kind. And she just looks at him and goes, I'm not rooting for you. Which is just such... There's like a couple moments here where you're like, so clearly, she is not a Jedi anymore. Another one is when she flat out tells Bo-Katan to torture someone to get information out of them. It's awesome. He is released. He causes all kinds of wreckage and chaos. The ship is now on the way to crashing. They're fighting. They're trying to get away. They kind of would love to rescue all the clones. They can't. They get away. The ship crashes. And then we get the final moments of where what we see is all of their rifles put like down in the ground with the helmets on top over mounds. And it looks like that she has buried all of them. And that she, in her final moments, decides to drop her lightsabers. And then we get to kind of make it look like she died there as well. And then we get the wonderful moment that looks like it's like 6 months later. The planet's now covered by snow, which, by the way, I believe this is the first time in Star Wars history that we saw the same planet have two fundamentally different weather at the same time. I don't think we've ever seen this before.
Yeah.
But it's hard to miss that because what you get.
Yeah,
well, thank you. It's this beautiful moment of Darth Vader holding the lightsaber, looking at it. He figures out what has happened, that she's dead, and he walks away. Well, we don't know we can talk more about that, but he clearly has some moment of thought about it. He walks away, and we see the final thing.
Yeah. He knows she was there, is it clearly?
Yeah, clearly. What did I miss?
The droids. She grabs 3 droids and fights against the clones with droids at the end of a series where she spent the whole time fighting against droids with clones. But
yeah, that's kind of cool. Not battle droids; these are R2 unit type things. But yeah,
these are astromech who do not spoilers. Don't have a very happy fate in this episode. But I mean, really, only Rex and Ahsoka. The thing I'm going to start at the end.
No one has a happy ending.
Yeah, exactly. Like Rex and Ahsoka survive, and as at the end. Like there's just they're visibly in pain. They're suffering. They're miserable. You know, they're not, woohoo, we did it. That's not what this is about. And everybody else dies as far as we can tell. And, they take the time to bury them and then they leave. And I find her leaving her lightsaber there a little confusing because my understanding was like that it was supposedly to make it look like she died. But like, how does that make it look like she died? Like clearly all of these troopers got buried by someone who then didn't go back and report to the Empire, hey, we buried all the clones because, like, so it's like, obviously she survived.
Yes.
Obviously someone survived,
I was wondering about that because that didn't make sense to me. And then in this episode, like the snow covers all that.
Yeah.
So all you see is the one helmet poking out.
Oh.
So, so in how it worked out, I don't think Vader has any idea that they're buried there. But then to go back to why Ahsoka did it,
right?
That she had no idea what planet she was on. Yeah. That she could predict its weather and also predict when Vader would get there.
Also, like the Force, and like he probably knows there's a mass graveyard there. Like I feel like that's something you're like, oh, a lot of people died here or dead people here.
Right?
Like, but
I'm just gonna...
but yeah. It looks really cool though, so I don't care that much about the ramifications. Like for him to have that moment to pick up the blue lightsaber, just like that to me, right? I mean, it's like it actually just looks super cool too, with like the black and the white snow and the bird up above, and like just that bright blue. But like it to me, it connects Anakin with Darth Vader in this way. Which
Aaron,
the bird, right? Were you going to say something about the bird?
Yeah, the bird, Morai, is like the bird who's said to like follow Ahsoka throughout her life.
Right.
Anyways, which I just want to say, I never interpreted her leaving her lightsabers as her trying to fake her death.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know why. Like, everyone was saying that, and I was like, oh, that's just like not how I got it personally. Like, it seemed like she was like leaving that part of her life and like wasn't expecting anyone to find it. Like, I don't think she was thinking anyone would look.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think I read that is kind of accepted as the interpretation, and maybe Filoni said something, but it didn't make it to me, because that was how I always took it the first time I saw it, was that she was like, I just killed clones.
Right.
Yeah.
And there's a moment where, like, she gets asked a couple times if she's a Jedi, and she's like, no, I'm not. And there's actually a great moment with, we can talk more about this, there's a great moment with her and Maul where Maul is trying to set it up as like, look, we both got betrayed by our organizations, and he's not wrong.
Right.
And then Obi-Wan later asks, Mace Mace asks, are you doing this as a Jedi? And she's like, no, not yet. And so, to me, it felt like throughout these episodes, she's struggling with these things. What Maul says gets to her, especially with what she feels later about Anakin. And this was her saying, like, I'm not going to fight anymore. I'm not going to be a part of any of this. I'm just walking away.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. To me, it felt like the symbolic thing, like you were saying.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just like everything she ever knew, like the entire world just ended to her.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So she's just like, F it.
Yeah.
Leave it all, It's like, was always my interpretation. And then it's like the fact that Anakin came after it is like, okay, well, why is he there? It's like, he seems to be like searching her out,
Right.
Like if it were just like, oh, here's a bunch of soldiers on Hoth, but it was like the soldiers were still actively looking for things and Vader was there too. So it's not like they found things and reported to him. It's like Vader is there very intentionally looking for something.
Right.
My opinion.
I agree.
And like later we find out like he's been, hunting Jedi and like things like that, the Inquisitors and all that. So it's like, just things to think about.
Yeah.
I still hold what I said before, that I think this doesn't make, like, the problem that I said I so often have with prequels is when you create something that then it seems weird that it doesn't get noticed. I don't think it's weird that this doesn't happen, but I do now really wish this had been made first, so that Vader could have said something about, like, I found your lightsaber, I thought you were dead, or, something like that, so we'd know. But the mystery of it's probably even better.
Yeah.
I mean, it seems like that wouldn't be the first thing they talk about when they, like, encounter each other in that Sith temple where, where shit goes down. Like, it's like...
well, let's go a little deeper on Ahsoka, because as I said, there's a lot of characters I want to talk about in this, but one of them definitely is Ahsoka, particularly because we're getting ready for her show. And I'll just say it, to me, this is such a... I never felt confused by who she was in Rebels, but I feel like this helps me much better understand, like, and it is helped also by the context that you brought up, Paul, because the first set of 4 episodes is also about her.
The second set of 4.
Second set of 4, you're right, I'm sorry. She's just left the Jedi Temple, and she kind of has adventures, like, trying to not be a Jedi, but, it's a classic, like, oh, I've left that left behind, and oh, but people are in trouble, I've got to help them. Mm-hmm. But yeah, what do you think these 4 episodes really say about and where they take Ahsoka's character? What do we learn about her?
I don't know. I feel like we just learn a lot. Like, she's always been the, like, and. Like, it's like Anakin and Ahsoka, Rex and Ahsoka. Or it's like, I feel like she's always been paired with somebody. And this was like, although, like, she was paired with Bo-Katan, like, they had 2 very different missions.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
And so I felt like we got to see more of, like, Ahsoka as, like, a confident and, like, secure leader. Like, standing up for, like, what she said to, like, Anakin and Obi-Wan, she never would have said if she was still in the Jedi Order. When Obi-Wan's like, okay, we're redirecting to Coruscant. And she's like, so that's it? You're just leaving Mandalore? Like, you just don't care anymore? Just, like, you're playing politics right now? And, like, she never would have called them out like that. But, like, the fact that she's had that time to, like, grow, have other experiences, learn who she is, learn a little more about the galaxy. It's just, like, we're seeing her come more into herself with, like, confidence. And a lot of it is, like, very, I think, learned through Anakin. Like...
Mm-hmm. Oh, I think there's a moment where you see Anakin's face, and he's like both frustrated and proud.
Yep.
In that moment of like, I'm really glad my student is standing up for themselves. I'm annoyed they're doing it at me.
Right.
But still, it's like,
Yeah.
Whereas Obi-Wan, it's just like, God, why did we give him a Padawan?
Yeah.
I think I think what you're saying is right in terms of this is her fully coming into her own. Although I still feel like at the very end she has one foot in, one foot out, because, like, why does she just leave one lightsaber? Because she had 2, like, that seems like a very deliberate, like, she's leaving half of her lightsabers there, and which, you think she lost the other one?
Well, the Ahsoka novel, I haven't read it for many years, but the Ahsoka novel is kind of the next, this version of the story, the next thing that happens chronologically before Rebels. And in that, she starts out without any lightsabers.
Yeah.
And remember also, she didn't have her lightsabers even in the early episodes.
No,
Anakin
I know.
gives them back to her.
Yeah, and then she ends up with 2 that are different color. Like, her future lightsabers clearly don't look like these. right?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean,
But also
she actually gets those by defeating a Sith and then
Inquisitor.
an Inquisitor. Thank you. Yeah. But would you Sith affiliated, Sith minor leagues. But yeah, and lightsabers they become red because you corrupt the kyber crystal,
right.
and then if you kind of heal the kyber crystal, they become white.
But like, I think she's always been this person to an extent. Like, to me, it feels like she's fully accepting who she is. But like early in, I think it was like season 1, there's this where Master Plo is like stranded, right? And she's like, no, we have to go back for him. We have to go back. Like, we're not gonna, and Anakin's like, no, you can't say that in the meeting. We're just going to do it ourselves on the down low, But like, I feel like she's pushed back a lot, but here she just does it. Right. It feels different, right? It doesn't feel like the sort of the power dynamic is different, she's like, I am who I am. I am not an underling of you. I'm saying we need to do this thing because this is the thing to do, not, someone in the power structure. Like, it plays differently. But
well, it changes her from being like a rebelling kid to being like someone standing up for what they believe.
Right, to being like an assertive young adult, basically.
Exactly,
yeah, absolutely.
It doesn't feel like, hey, master, but don't you remember? It's just like, hey, as your peer, I'm telling you this.
Right.
And also, I think the fact that she's challenging, like you said, normally Anakin would be like, I'm really on your side.
Right.
Here he's not.
Right.
I think that's all. I think... And I'm trying hard not to project too much because it is very, very subtle, small things we get. But I do think that, like, the fact that he does this is, like, I think she's a little disappointed in him. I think she's a little surprised, and I think that kind of ties into what she learns about him later.
Yeah. I mean, also, I think it should be noted that, like, when she gets back, he's like, Ahsoka! And she's like, yeah, whatever. Like, we got to do this thing.
Yeah.
And, like, super understandable. Probably didn't help, like, in his like deepest, darkest moments, but like that's not a blame thing. That's just a like sequence of events things. It's like bad timing, and to me, it does add to the sort of plausibility of the events of Revenge of the Sith, where it's like you can see how having this relationship with his Padawan, who then becomes someone that he becomes very proud of, but like kind of isn't having it from it, is kind of still like that. Yeah. If the sequence of events were different, like things could have gone very differently, and they just didn't.
In order to believe that he falls for it without a chip, you have to believe that he is all of a sudden fully convinced that the Jedi are terrible and wrong.
Right.
Granted, the whole dark side thing has some element of the chip type, like a mind control-y kind of a thing. But I do think you're right. I think in some ways, like, giving him the fact that the Jedi, they pushed out Ahsoka. They tried to bring her back, but they pushed her out.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that maybe, like, 'cause also, like, part of it is that he was kind of a dick to her during that time.
Yeah.
And she and he doesn't want to accept that.
Yeah.
And he's 100% the person who'd be like, oh, Ahsoka isn't really mad at me. She's mad at the Jedi Council. The Jedi Council, he would 100%
right, and then he would project all that away. Yeah. One other thing that you said, Aaron, about like Ahsoka and like here it's Ahsoka and Bo-Katan, but like they're peers, right? They're like each leading their own part of the mission, and then it's Ahsoka and Rex is he's not exactly a subordinate, but basically she's like, this is what we're doing. He's like, yes, sir, basically, right? And
the power dynamic between them is flipped. And I even think it even kind of starts with that, I'll race you to the bottom.
Right, yeah.
She was always like, no, Rex, you're more experienced. He was like, no, you're my commander.
Right.
But it's that, And I think that, I think the power, but also think the fact that she's by herself entirely is really getting kind of, Aaron, what you were saying, that she has to fight Rex and then figure it all out on her own.
Yeah.
I do, and I like getting to see like she's got a detective side, like the fact that she thinks to go get that, and that she has to figure out how to get this super sealed folder, which is actually like has the password protection of like my Microsoft account. But fair enough. I don't think we very rarely see that from some of the other Jedi. We saw that from Obi-Wan definitely, but not Anakin very often.
Yeah.
I mean, she's definitely come a long way from that episode where she's with Master Plo and he's trying to be like, we're detectives. And then he goes and slaps his lightsaber on the bar and he's like, tell me what I want to know. And she saw that and said, that's what's not to do.
Right.
Yeah.
That's not.
Definitely. The last thing I really noticed about her in this that I think really sets us up for what happens in Rebels and Mandalorian and Boba Fett and also hopefully the new show is how much she, like her mixed feelings about the Jedi. Like when Maul is kind of needling her about how she betrayed them, and she's like, no, I voluntarily left. Like this feels like someone who's very much in denial, who's not ready to accept that she did get kicked out, and then later she left, but they expelled her first, and she has a lot of resentment about that. She has a lot of anger about that. And I think that kind of helps you understand why so many years later she's still not like, oh yeah, I'm a Jedi, I can train Grogu. She's like, no, that's not me.
Yeah, it still doesn't make all the sense because it's like, couldn't you just train him in the Force and be like, yeah, I'm not a Jedi. Like, Jedi aren't a thing anymore. Like, let's not really use that as a word. And we'll just be like, yeah, I'll teach him how to do his stuff. And, like, we'll chill and, hang out in this forest and meditate and whatnot. Like,
I mean, I agree with you, but they had to get a cool CGI Luke Skywalker back on the screen.
The payoff was worth it. So, like, I don't.
Yeah.
Basically, if you do things that kind of are like a little contrived and don't super make sense to me, but like don't have these like negative consequences on the characters, and you end up in a spot that's like, oh yeah, that it was worth getting there. It's like, yeah, whatever, it's cool. Whereas if you do that in order to like kill off a character or something, like, nope, not having any of that.
There were a lot of moments, frankly, that again, because I've now watched it so many times, are a little like, clones seem to have the aim of plot. Their ability to fight Jedi is very plot controlled. How Rex is very willing to start killing his brothers, who we know he cares so much about, and it's Ahsoka. Like, there were a couple of little things like that just or just some of the physics stuff that threw me off. I don't know how many bodies you actually get to bury when the ship crashes from space, but like,
yeah, I mean that's a different story. I was just gonna say, like, I would address some of those points, like. In terms of like Ahsoka kills the first two clones who fire on her. And I think that's just like instinct. And then after that, she just deflects a bunch of blasts and then goes up through the ceiling somehow, which is like, I don't know. That's cool. She's Jedi. And then Rex shoots at the clones because they're shooting at him. Like, I don't find it hard to believe that a soldier, when fired upon, is just going to be like, yeah, I'm just going to kill you. Like, you're trying to kill me, I'm going to kill you.
Literally, he had his clones firing at him during the Pong Krell episodes. And once he realized it, he was like, no, I have to stop firing, even though they're shooting at me.
But what were the circumstances there?
Well, it's because he knew that they were firing him out of misinformation, which is kind of what's happening here.
Right.
Like,
no, but
it's not the exact same, but it just...
Yeah.
They wanted Ahsoka to have that moment, and that was fine.
Okay, sure,
it was a little weird that... Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I will say, though, that the thing, you made a comment earlier about, like, how Ahsoka manages to survive all this, and whereas all these Master Jedi just, like, get punked. And to me, that's definitely not an issue with this. That's an issue with that. Because I saw this episode, I'm like, that's what it should have looked like, And, like, some of them won't survive and some of them will. But every single one of those Jedi, like, they're like built up as having so much power, and then in this critical moment just powered down because it's convenient, and it's like, here to me, Ahsoka, it makes all the sense, and also, like, this is an example to me of, like, there are certain, I won't name any of these things, but like there's certain things that sometimes people are like, oh, is that really credible? Like, where did this character learn that? Or like, how could they do that? Or like, that's kind of stretches, whatever. It's like, this doesn't, in my opinion, even without the Tales of the Jedi, where they like explicitly are like, this is why she was able to nail that one situation just perfectly, right? Because she literally trained for it over and over and over and over and over and over and over. Like, this to me is like, yes, this is a character who is fully realizing her potential, like in a combat sense and in a sort of a command sense and a like strategizing. And it's like, sometimes it takes 7 seasons, but it's like, it is earned, you know? And I think you don't always get that, you know? And I mean, you don't always get 7 seasons of TV to tell a story either.
Yeah.
But, you know, I think, you know, the Clone Wars, I love that they wrapped it up, you know, with Ahsoka and Rex, because it's like, to me, the story of the Clone Wars, like, she's the POV character in a lot of respects. You know, I mean, yeah, it goes all over the place. It covers a lot of different people, which I also think is cool. But like, she's the character who goes from, you know, entry-level Padawan, right, with talent, but like not a lot of experience, to like just total badass who's like able to do all these things. And literally, you know, this falling out of space scene, you know, where like she's hopping and skipping over ships, like that is completely credible within the context of everything we've seen from her up to this point, right? And you know, the only disappointing thing to me is like, I want other things to be more like that, you know, but like here it's like that they just nail it, and it's awesome. I need water. Someone else talk.
I mean, just like, yeah, it's awesome. Like, incredible. There's just such incredible episodes of television. Like, everything about it is beautiful. The opening scenes, the way that, like, the second episode ended, where it's just like, okay, now I can't think of exactly how it ended. But, like, Maul had said something really, he had said something really, like, ominous. And it just kind of showed, that was it. So showed Ahsoka looking up through the glass shattered.
Oh, yeah.
And it just kind of like panned out with this really dramatic music and then just ended. And the credits like started silent.
Yeah, he says we're all going to die.
That's what he said, yeah.
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 His delivery of the whole Sidious, everything Sidious is doing is so good. It's so compelling. It's like...
I would say I wanted to transition to the next character, which is, to me, this is probably my favorite Maul. Like, he's so good in a lot of Rebels. He's fun in some other parts of Clone Wars. I think this is peak Maul to me.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And in a way, again, I don't want to keep bashing on the prequels, but this does exactly what I thought they did. This does what I wanted them to do with Count Dooku, which is, I really like stories where there are multiple antagonists who... one of them might be unintentionally helping the other antagonist or just distracting our hero, but they're not working for the same thing and they're working somewhat at cross purposes. Like, in the second movie, I think I would have loved that second movie if it was, well, no, the romance was... not going to get into that.
If
you can listen to my thoughts on it.
A separate antagonist, right?
Yeah, if Dooku was someone who actually believed... that the Republic, if Dooku was right, basically,
right.
Which he was anyway, but like he wasn't being manipulated. Yeah. Well, he was being manipulated, but not controlled.
Right.
Yeah.
The fact that Maul is Cassandra here. Maul knows the answers. If people would just listen to Maul, then we probably could have stopped all of this. But if nothing else, they might have asked him, who is Sidious? And you go, he's your chancellor.
Yeah. I mean, if Maul weren't so busy like messing around with the pikes and like doing Maul things, you know, like maybe he could have, you know, it's like, let me wait till the worst possible moment to where I'm going to reveal to you that dude's master plan, which will actually accidentally distract you from having any chance of stopping it.
Stopping the plan, yeah.
Yeah, like just trying to stop the plan, but trying to stop the plan makes the plan go better.
Yeah, and then the horrible irony that because the clones are trying to kill her, but she doesn't want to kill them, she releases him, and he does a thing that winds up killing all of them anyway. But also just him being both like so angry at Sidious, but still able to be like, your plan is brilliant. Like this, he sees the whole picture. It's so good, and what do you all think of Maul in this?
That's how I felt on September 11th, actually. Like, when I first learned about the whole planes and the towers fall, I was like, oh, that's really clever. That was like my fourth or fifth thought. You know, it's a little different, but like there is something to be said for like recognizing strategy, and it's like, even when it's used horribly, of course. Maul here is just, he's like, he has so much gravitas, and like the music supports it, and the lighting, and I don't want to say he's like an underused character, because I actually feel like a lot of Maul might not play this well, you know? Yeah. But I do feel like he's used to perfection here. Ahsoka freeing him and then him killing a bunch of clones, though, I'm kind of like, are you sure you don't want to just kill clones yourself? Like, are you sure, like, this is not kind of the same thing? You know?
Yeah.
He also has the best Magneto scene, you know? The one with like the metal doors and stuff, and like he just rips the panels off with the Force. Like that's better than I've seen Magneto.
Yeah, his Force powers go hard.
Yeah, it's like, ooh.
Well, like I said, I mean, Ahsoka does do some things that pretty clearly lead to the death. Like she wants to kill as few as possible. Yeah. And I think again, I mean, she gives him a weapon, and it's much, much worse.
Sure.
But
I mean, I think maybe it's rationalizing, you know, it's kind of being like, it's not going to be my hand. I understand a lot of people here are probably going to die, but like, I'm not going to directly.
Yeah.
Right.
And just going, oh, sorry, did you have something on this topic?
No, go ahead.
Just going back to Maul in general, like, I agree. This is like peak Maul, because ever since Maul got cut in half, every time we see him, he seems a little crazier, like a little more unhinged. Well, actually, no. He gets a lot less crazy after he gets his spider body taken away. But he's still crazy. Like, he still just, like, seems mad. He's, like, all over the place, scatterbrained, you know, like, maniacal laughter. And it's, like, crazy to have that moment of, like, wait, he's not crazy. Like, this character's been portrayed as being, like, so all over the place. And, like, he still is all over the place. But it's, like, just seeing his, like, thoughts really, like, come into place. I don't know. I just think it's cool. It gives him a lot of, like, it just makes him more interesting.
Yeah.
It feels...
like I said, I think... Go ahead.
Oh. I have no idea what I was about to say. Go ahead.
I mean, the fact he is the only one in the galaxy who really pulls all of it together. You know, I mean, he even before Obi-Wan figures it out, he says, you know, they're playing these two. He made all this happen, and it's again wonderfully paid off later, because when he then finds out about Luke, because he realizes that on Tatooine is kind of the next step of all of this, and why Obi-Wan is so fascinated with Luke. And it's interesting there again, because also he says, like, oh, I wanted Obi-Wan here because I wanted to kill Anakin. And he says that because he wants to stop Sidious. But I feel like that, in many ways, if Maul could have killed Anakin, which, frankly, I don't think could have happened. I think Anakin would have probably defeated him.
Yep.
But it'd be a fun fight to watch. But it's a perfect thing for Maul, because he gets to screw over Obi-Wan and Sidious.
Right.
He ruins Sidious' plan, and he kills the person who Obi-Wan cares most about, who he was supposed to kill way back when Obi-Wan killed him. I mean, it just would be...
Yeah, basically, he kills the one dude's protege to keep him from becoming the other dude's protege. And
yeah.
I feel like Maul plays like someone who's just, like, seen too much, you know? Like, he's seen, like, too much of the truth, kind of, and... Here, it makes sense because it's this very finite point where everything comes together. And then before this and after this, it's kind of very scattered, you know?
Yeah.
But like, this is the moment when it kind of, it gels and it makes sense.
And it also, for me, it really solidifies one of the things I feel about the dark side, which is that I think it's easy to think the dark side, if you use the dark side of the Force, you're just evil McEvil, you're a fascist, you want to rule everything, you're completely and totally malevolent. And I, for the most part, don't think that's true. I think that, and this has actually been established in more of the novels and some of the comics, but, you know, part of what makes Vader so powerful is that he is angry all of the time. And one of the reasons he's angry all the time is because he knows Sidious screwed him. Because he did honestly believe that Sidious would make things better, that Palpatine would make things better, and he didn't.
Yeah.
And I think in some ways, when he says to Luke, we can rule the galaxy as father and son, he does believe that they would be. It's the exact thing that he said to Padme way back of like, I would just make things better.
Yeah.
And I think Maul is the exact same way. I think Maul honestly believes him and Ahsoka could make the galaxy better through, terror and control and ultimate power. But he's not in the mwahaha ultimate power he's not in the mwahaha ultimate power mode that Palpatine is. And I think it again beautifully foreshadows because it's the exact same place he then later winds up with Ezra. And I kind of feel like that is this is what's driving him mad, is he sees the whole picture and no one will believe him. And I kind of think that's what eventually drives him to Obi-Wan. Because I think part of him hopes that he'll kill Obi-Wan, but part of him may also be like, Obi-Wan will just end it. It'll just be over.
Yeah.
And either way, I think he's okay with that.
Yeah.
Agreed.
Such a good character. Like, I'm so glad he didn't die from being cut in half.
Right.
Because, like, I was so mad for so long. I was like, yo, so this is the coolest character design ever that you literally just threw down a hole. Like, come on. He was the first one with the lightsaber stuff, too? Come on.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think...
I was just going to say, in the first movie, he doesn't feel like much of a character. He feels like you nailed it with character design, right? Like, in terms of the look and the feel and, like, how he moves and everything. And then when they brought him back, I feel like they gave him kind of purpose and personality and, like, a lot more to, like... does he have lines in The Phantom Menace?
Barely. And like, Ray Park is an amazing... He's a fight coordinator.
Right.
He got hired to play him.
Yeah.
He's an incredible martial artist on screen. And when it comes to his acting, he's an incredible fight coordinator. Like, he's not bad. But I think there was a version of the script where he says literally nothing. And I think that would have been better. Because you're right, he's not a character. He's like a malevolent force of nature.
Right.
And he's incredibly intimidating and terrifying as that. But then, later they were like, what if we actually get a voice actor? What if we get and Sam Witwer is just top 5 of Clone Wars actors? I mean, he's just like so good.
I'll take your word for it.
Yeah. Oh,
I've never heard him speak. But whoever did the Cantonese dub, awesome. Spot on. It was really good.
That's awesome.
And I've also watched this episode in like at least 3 other languages. So I've seen this episode a lot of times. I watched it a while ago. And every now and then I come back to be like, was this really that good? It was really that good.
Well, that also says a lot. Like, I imagine that they got good actors that are dubbing it, but that you could watch it in some languages that you knew well and some you didn't know well.
Yeah.
And it's still just as good every time. Like,
yeah.
The animation is just...
Yeah. It's by far the best Clone Wars animation. And it's like not even close, This whole season is a step above the earlier seasons. But then these last 4 episodes, they just go extra, Like the action is so crisp and clean. And there's, sometimes it's in shadows, sometimes it's in light. But I always know what they're doing. I'm like, oh, they're doing this. Yeah. They're like, as a martial artist, like... I see the physical movements and they all make sense.
To give you an idea of how deep they went, I don't think they did this in any other time in Clone Wars. I don't know if they did this in Rebels even. They may have. But for that lightsaber scene that I think we were all talking about as one of the best, if not the best, they got live actors, including Ray Park, the person who originally did Darth Maul. They got him back. And then an incredible motion actor for Ahsoka.
Yeah, Lauren Mary Kim.
Thank you. Say that name again.
Lauren Mary Kim.
Lauren Mary Kim.
She also plays... She's the stunt double for the governor who Ahsoka fights in The Mandalorian.
Yes,
which I think is kind of funny.
Oh, that's awesome. Okay.
So she's been on both ends of Ahsoka's lightsabers.
But yeah, they got 2 live action people in full motion capture to have live action have that fight, and then they just transfer that to animation.
Yeah.
Which
so cool.
It's just so next level, yeah.
Absolutely.
Let's talk about Rex. And Aaron, I want to really kind of give you the floor here because I know you're a big Rex fan, and I love actually, Paul, what you pointed out that like Ahsoka and Rex, the 2 new characters in this, are really kind of our final characters. What do you think of this of Rex's role, and how did it feel for you, especially like when Rex is firing at Ahsoka?
Yeah. It's just crazy. It's just like that scene was just me watching my worst childhood fears. Like, no, like not Rex. But like, I don't know, just like his character, like we were talking about before, like you were saying, it's hard to see or to like wrap your mind around the fact that he just immediately starts firing on the other clones. Mm-hmm. But honestly, to me, that is like one of the most Rex things he has done. Like that is just who he is. Like, and like Ahsoka says to him, like he's a good soldier and like an even better friend. Like loyalty is everything to him. And so it's like just because we know he was semi-conscious while the chip was in charge, you know?
He fights it for like half a second, and it's so powerful.
Long enough to say look up fives, right? Like,
yeah.
Like he fights it to that extent, but even to the extent where it's like after she removes his chip, he's talking about like things he did while the chip was in control, but like he still kind of like remembered it.
Yeah.
So like, I don't know. To me, it's like he was on the other side of the chip. He knows they don't care. He knows I didn't care. I was unable to fight that. Like, it's just like how it is. Like he knows better than anyone in that moment that that is his only option to live. For either of them to live, you know?
Well, there's a quick point I want to make, and actually a question I have for you about that. First of all, just the fact that she calls him, the specific word she says is good soldier. Mm-hmm. Because I absolutely heard in my head, good soldiers follow orders. Mm-hmm. And I think that is very that connection is very intentional. You know, not like you're a good man or you're a good fighter, you know, or a good, you know, but just a good soldier. Mm-hmm. But also, here's my question for you. Because you're right, he is also fiercely, fiercely protective of Ahsoka. Mm-hmm. If she's not there, if it's just his former brothers now trying to kill him, and he knows that she is safe, do you think he fights back in the exact same way?
I don't know. I think his initial reaction would be the same, as in like fight, flight, or freeze. Like it's fight, you know, like it's about survival. But it's like if he ends up in a situation where it's like he's been on the run for like a bit of time and like actually has that time to like think, he'd probably be like, yeah, I don't care. Like I have nothing to live for or no one to care about. Like, I think it's very true that he probably would have like lost a lot of hope or just like not felt a need to fight. But also I think like growing up being trained only to be a soldier, it's like while your mind is in like that fear adrenaline mode, like I think he would just kind of fight. So it's hard to know.
Paul,
but that's a very interesting question. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I would have to. I feel like it might depend on context. I do think that there might be just like an instinctive sort of self-defense kicking in. You know, I will say his only way of surviving that situation was not to shoot the other troopers. He could have just shot Ahsoka in the back and be like, "Yeah, she kidnapped me." You know. Mm-hmm. I mean, obviously he wouldn't do that, but I'm just saying, like, if he were, you know, one of these scheming, self-preservation only sort of characters, like that would have been a way out, you know?
Yeah.
It's like he hadn't actually done anything yet, right? He'd gotten kidnapped and then had his chip removed while he was unconscious.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think I ask it because I'm wrestling with it as well, and I would have started by saying that I think he is first and foremost a protector, and he frequently is willing to risk his life or even like sacrifice his life to save others. Mm-hmm. And so I think in part, I kind of feel like in that same way, yeah, maybe the fight or flight instinct would kick in, but then after he has like when he's like hiding or running away, maybe he'd tell himself like, I'm not going to shoot at them again. I'm going to keep trying to run, but I'm not going to kill my brothers if they're going through this thing. But that his need to protect Ahsoka is what allows him to do that. Mm-hmm. Just also on the subject of him, I love that we get this little existential moment from him where they're talking about like, you know, what if the whole Clone Wars could have been avoided? And he's like, well, yeah, that's probably good because like all I've ever known is being a soldier, but also then I wouldn't exist.
Yeah.
You know?
And Ahsoka's like, well, at least some good came of it.
Yeah.
Yeah. I feel like the scenes with Ahsoka and Rex, and this is kind of getting to what you were talking about, Paul, but I'm kind of making it a little more specific in one way. This let me feel the tragedy and the sadness of Order 66 in a way that 4 Jedi Masters who I'd never really gotten to know dying in ways that didn't make any sense never did. I mean, I sobbed. I think by now I'm kind of immune to it. Not immune, but inured to it at least. But I sobbed the first like 4 or 5 times I watched this because it's just so heartbreaking.
Yeah.
I think in our original recording, I said that I had watched it like 4 different times already before we recorded on it. And I was like, yeah, I was like tearing up at different points in each watch, you know?
Yeah.
And it was the same with like Mandalorian season 2, episode 8, I think, where it's like, there's just these things where like something, but I mean, this is the whole thing is meant to be sad, right? And it's like, it's just sad. It's a sad story. And it's in the overall arc of Star Wars, I feel like there's a lot of contrivance and a lot of, okay, how are we going to get to plot point number 3 and what's the pinch and like, you know, it's just kind of mechanized story structuring. And here it just all feels very organic. And I'm sure it was very carefully planned, you know. I'm sure they were thinking about, okay, how are we going to do this and that? But it doesn't feel like it never feels to me like overtly manipulative. It feels it just feels genuine. It feels like this is the story, and you know the you're a good soldier and like Rex tearing, right, and Ahsoka taking his helmet off, like that feels real to me. That doesn't feel like someone was like, how can we get this in the story? It feels like great storytelling to me is when characters not just like do something that you're like, oh yeah, they might do that. It's like when it feels like, no, that is the only thing that character would do. Like that's the only thing that would make sense here. You know, when it feels like, of course, that's what the character would do. And to me, I felt that really throughout these 4 episodes even. You know, I mean, there's things earlier also in the first 2 episodes where it just, you know, there's that dramatic scene like just before the big lightsaber or at the beginning of the big lightsaber battle. Ahsoka and Maul are facing off and they're alone in this room on a planet that's in the middle of war. And it's like,
right.
That could feel super contrived, right? It could feel like, where's everybody else? But it doesn't, because actually Maul manipulated things to he got them to blow stuff up out there to draw Rex off, right? He's got Jesse, who's just been tortured. Oh no, Rex goes Rex takes Jesse off, and then Bo-Katan has to go and deal with the city, right? And so it's like, of course it's just Maul versus Ahsoka there, and no one else is there, right? It's like, it feels like the only things that feel contrived it doesn't feel contrived, it feels like he contrived it in story. It's like he arranged this, you know, he was the sort of manipulator that I feel like we've been told that the Emperor is. I would push back on whether or not he really whatever, but like here it just hits, and I feel like it just does that on like all of the character beats, you know, and the action beats. Like it just there just aren't points in this, like watching these 4 things where it just feels like, yeah, well, to me anyway. I know, you know, maybe there's some things that pop out, but like, yeah, you know, I just feel like Rex is Rex, Ahsoka's Ahsoka, Maul's Maul. Bo-Katan's Bo-Katan. Yeah. She is, like, we didn't talk about her that much, but like she has one line that I love that sums up a lot of what I was feeling in, you know, in like The Mandalorian and stuff. Like she says, I wish I was good at anything other than war, or at something other than war. You know, she's very good at war, you know, and that's very credible. And she's not very good at being a leader, and that's also credible, you know. And to this point, anyway, I'm not necessarily talking about further on. She's very good at being a military leader, I should say. Yeah. Right. Yeah.
And I'm going to be I think we won't spoil too much of Mandalorian season 3 because that has still fairly recently come out. But I think if you're going to watch Mandalorian Season 3, watch these episodes.
100%.
And if you have watched Mandalorian Season 3, go back and watch these episodes because the Bo-Katan pieces hit. Like, it was so clear that when they were doing their research to write Mando Season 3, they went back and watched these episodes, and they not only paid attention to the Ahsoka stuff, but they paid close attention to Bo-Katan.
Yeah.
Because, and it's funny even because some characters are like, hey, weren't you the, like they talk about weren't you in Death Watch, and they don't understand where she got here because they haven't seen that this is her transition from Death Watch to this. And like there's even a line where she gets in Mando Season 3. And there's even a line where, you know, someone says to her, like, you know, weren't, you know, it's someone says, like, you know, you sound like your sister. And she's like, I've come to believe that she had some really good ideas, you know, which is you know, she was leading a terrorist group against her sister before. There's just so many layers. Like, we can talk about this for hours and hours and hours.
I have a question. The character next to Bo-Katan at the end is that Sabine's mom?
Yeah, Ursa.
It is, right? Okay. Yeah. From Rebels.
Ursa and I think they may have mentioned Clan Ren once, but I know they definitely call her Ursa. And then Ursa Ren is Sabine Wren's mom. Yeah,
I didn't remember hearing the name, but I guess it's in there, right? I mean, clearly, I like animated. I'm like, yeah, that's her. That's
yeah. I think it's even the same voice actress.
Okay, yeah. Cool.
Whew. Any other last thing? I know we don't want to go too much longer. Any other last things either you want to bring up?
Oh, just shouts out to one of the coolest lightsaber tricks ever of Ahsoka using the Force to cut a circle for them to follow.
Oh, yeah.
So sick. And I think that's in the Ahsoka trailer, too, for the new show. But it's just like, wow. Like, Anakin and Obi-Wan did the original, like, let's cut through the floor. But it's like, you're nowhere near as cool because you did it with your hands and not the Force.
Yeah.
And you have one lightsaber and she is too. So she's just so much cooler than you guys.
The scene where she's kind of falling from the Republic ship to the planet and just kicking ass the whole way she goes. Like, it is such an iconic scene that if you go on TikTok, there are a number of videos where people have set different music to that. And of course, now my brain can't think of any of them, but they're always so awesome. And they almost always like either culminate or like one of the most, like the scene where like just the note where like the music really kicks in is that one where she like just drops into one of the ships with her two legs splayed out and like just sidekicks two of them at the same time. It's just
That's when they're attacking Mandalore, right?
Yeah. And it's the kind of thing where, like, when I see it in one of those videos and I see a 5-second clip of it, I'm like, that's kind of dumb. But seeing it in context, seeing all the other stuff she's done that builds up to it, totally works. Totally makes sense.
So cool.
All right. Well, thank you both so much. I'm glad we got to do this. Or Paul, you're making a face. Do you have something else you want to say?
Yeah. I was going through all my things to find, like, the last thing that I wanted to say. There's like two things.
Go for it.
One is when the Prime Minister of Mandalore is like telling them his last words are Skywalker.
So funny.
Like little Yoda foreshadowing. Like, I mean, Star Wars likes to like reuse lines and kind of wink at itself, and like sometimes it's like, I don't know, but like here I just like I liked it there. I thought it was good. And then just overall,
no one in this ever says they have a bad feeling.
Right? Exactly. It's like here it's like subtle enough, and it just, of course, that's what he would say right there. And they just kind of like made it, just a little parallel, but they didn't like do gymnastics to get there. And then right after, during the scene where Maul is like, justice is merely the construct of the current power base, there's like those explosions outside, and it just sounds like a thunderstorm. And it's like almost soothing, but it's like the city is on fire and everything's blowing up. But it's like almost this like thunderstorm kind of, we're in here and it's cozy. Oh, right. Let's get to the lightsaber duel.
Right.
But the sound throughout this, like there's so many things that are so good about these episodes, but I feel like the sound is the thing that could go kind of uncommented on, but like the music as well, where you don't get a whole bunch of those like big swells that you get in a lot of Star Wars, right? Which are also awesome, but it's like understated but it sets the tone. Like the whole thing feels so tense because it is.
I would think that the last 2 episodes probably have the lowest dialogue counts of any in the series. Like, there are long stretches of, like, multiple minutes where not a word is said, where it's just, like, you know, things happening on the and sometimes it's, like, because there's action scenes and there's music, but sometimes it's just, like, you know, Rex and Ahsoka, like, that whole burial scene, I mean, is long. The whole, like, so many scenes of, like, you know, Rex and Ahsoka on the bridge coming to deal with things. Like, there's not a lot of dialogue in those last 2 episodes. The dialogue is great.
Yeah.
But they could have filled it up with a lot of filler dialogue, which I think they often do. And here they just let the animation and the sound speak for itself.
Yeah, they let it breathe. You know, they really let the moments breathe, and they didn't feel like they had to, like, assert themselves on the story. It, like, feels like they let the story, you know, tell itself at points, which I know involves a ton of work, and animation isn't, like, something that happens on its own. But, like, it just... The restraint to not throw in some words there, right? To not be like, oh, where to next, Rex? Well, we should do that. You know, like, that would have been awful. It would have just, like, totally stepped on the moment, and they just let it breathe. Yep. And then Vader comes, and there's no, like, oh, Lord Vader. Well, it's like, we don't need you to tell us it's Lord Vader, right? Like, we hear him. He's breathing.
And in some ways, the fact that we don't know exactly why Ahsoka leaves the lightsaber or what he's thinking as he picks it up is frustrating, but probably so much better than any way they could have told us.
Yeah.
Like,
like, I don't find it frustrating at all. It's like I get to choose. I get to think about what I think they're thinking about. You know, I get to feel it. And it's like it maybe it's not even a coherent thought. It's just a feeling. Just the emotion is there. It's in the scene without a word needing to be uttered. You know, and that, to me, that's masterful visual storytelling, right? And film, right? Film and TV and whatever, you know, all these different media that are basically one medium that is like synchronized sound and video. Like, that's a masterful level of that. And it's just so powerful. And it goes throughout the entire 4-episode arc and just culminates there at the end with that last shot of the reflection of Vader walking away in that helmet, you know, in the clone helmet with Ahsoka's face painted on it. It's just beautiful.
Yeah.
I think there's other technical moments that are as good, like in Andor, but there's very, very few. I think this is, in terms of that kind of technical storytelling, the best Star Wars animation has ever given us. Like, in many ways, I kind of like Rebels a little more, and I think in some ways even the Ahsoka Vader confrontation scene and the Maul Obi-Wan confrontation scene take me to highs that I don't quite get even in these episodes, but just from the technical perspective, I don't think there's anything in Rebels that's quite this good. It's just there was so much, and it sucked to not get season 7 when we wanted to get season 7, but I'm kind of glad because it just felt like this was the love letter they wanted. You know, this was all of that, you know, them wanting it to go back and show all the love to a show that was pretty, like, I think it has now become much more beloved in part because so much more things are paying relevance to it. But when I watched it and I would tell like hardcore Star Wars fans that had seen it, they'd be like, what are you talking about? I was a hardcore Star Wars fan. I had a Star Wars podcast. And Paul, you were like...
Someone had to convince you to watch the Clone Wars.
Yeah. So.
Yeah, no, it's very rarely is something paused and then added to later, and that turns out like really well. This is maybe one of the rare instances where I think it turned out far better than if they just continued their story and wrapped it. Like, the technology progressed a little bit. They had the time to really just nail it.
Yeah.
Yeah. I will say I will never forgive Disney for the fact that initial cancellation meant the story, the plot of Dark Disciple wasn't going to be on screen, and I would give anything to see those episodes. I really would. Because, like, Ventress is one of my favorites, and that book is so good. And Quinlan is such an interesting character, Quinlan Voss. But anyways, so I will always forever be salty about that, but I can't at all complain about how they ended it, because it was, like you guys said, like, perfect. To give it that time to, like, breathe and establish a few more stories, and then just to be able to tie it all together perfectly in that way was really... It makes it a little better that they canceled it and took that away from, like, 13-year-old me.
I'll also say, as much as I think even back then they were doing great things, Dark Disciple, I think, is such a good book in many ways because it's one of the most complex, and it goes so deep into the true nature. That sounds ridiculous, but, you know, like the complexity of the dark side and of the Force in a way that is hard to capture on screen in any format, but I think would be very hard to capture, particularly in Clone Wars at the time they were making it, when it was still in some ways a kid's show. I mean, there's a lot, like, the eroticism of that book is really important and talks a lot about passion and so I agree with you, but it's also like Dark Disciple is so good that if they did it wrong, I'd be so mad.
No, it's like, don't get me wrong, I would still want the book. I just would also want the TV.
Yeah. Maybe they'll like go back. I mean, they make a lot of things, you know.
It is
maybe I can understand the disappointment or frustration of not having that then, but like maybe there's still hope, you know.
Yeah. And I'll just say kind of the last thing on what you were saying about how much this paid off the first thing. I'll just kind of echo what said. It's brilliant because it's both a sequel and a prequel. I mean, it really is a prequel to Rebels without any of the problems they usually have. It's
a requel because it's retreading the same time period that's already been done in the prequel, but it's doing it different, you know?
POV switch.
It's not a remake. Yeah.
Exactly. All right. Well, let's actually wrap up. I know we had time constraints and I want to honor them. So, Ahsoka, Erin McGowan, people can find you cosplaying Ahsoka and talking about cosplay and all sorts of stuff, but they need to know where to look. Where do they look?
Yes, friends. I'm on TikTok and Instagram as Lady Tano Creates. Lady Tano, because that's what Maul calls Ahsoka in such a respectful and disrespectful way. I just loved it. Anyway, so yeah, again, Lady Tano Creates. Most of what I do is cosplay related. You know, I'll post pictures and stuff from conventions as well as like updates on stuff I'm working on. Summer's been really busy, so I've kind of slowed down in the frequency of my posting, but I am still, you know, slowly working through things. Otherwise, sometimes I'll just do like random Star Wars filters I found on TikTok, and I'll just sit there and I'll just play a bunch of the filters and post it because I'm bored, you know? So, got some interesting stuff if you want to swing by.
The red flag, green flags are particularly entertaining.
That was fun.
And Hoppy person. I was going to say Mr., but...
person.
But also I was going to say...
you can go with master. I mean, it's accurate.
Well, it's...
but, you know.
Well, like, you know, like, I was going to say mix, which is now apparently the non-gendered, like, Mr. or Ms., but, just, it sounds awful. What's you...
No, like a master.
To anybody who uses it, I apologize. If you're happy with it, great. I'm frustrated. I'm at the moment frustrated by the lack of good non-gendered words because I'm about to become an uncle or an uncle or whatever, and I hate most of the words. Anyway, we're on a tangent of a tangent of a tangent, but Lady Tano has her hand in the air. Lady
Real quick,
Tano.
What I go for any non-binary person, aye, Captain.
Captain.
Aye, Captain. Not like, that. Yes, sir. Aye, Captain.
To really get the full, like, you can't see this on radio, but like you need to make it 2 fingers when you salute, you know, instead of the full hand. Get the. It's like almost finger guns.
Do they call Ahsoka? They say, "Sir, yes, sir," and she's like, "You don't have to call me, sir," and she's like, "Copy that, sir," or something.
No, it's Commander. It's
Commander.
They just say Commander.
Yes,
every
Commander.
Time? Okay, yeah. The subtitles.
They have used "sir" for her
sometimes.
During the Clone Wars, though.
They have, right? Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
They
and
call anyone sir.
Right.
Yeah, they think they call Yaddle sir in some of the books. Like,
sure.
It's
military. Oh yeah, I'm Zen Madman. Paul Christopher Hoppy in places on the internet, whatever.
Cool. And I, of course, am the Ethical Panda. If you go to theethicalpanda.com, you'll find all the podcasting I do, both here and on Superhero Ethics. Superhero Ethics is in a bit of a hiatus at the moment while I kind of figure out what I'm doing, and we do have so much going on with Star Wars Universe podcast. I will have some good episodes, though, about that pretty soon, but definitely we're going to have a lot of Star Wars stuff coming your way. We are continuing our Rebels coverage, so we're going to hopefully finish so we will hopefully finish Rebels Season 4 before the Ahsoka show comes out. A lot of things we're trying to do to build up to that. Also, because I clearly have lots of free time in my hand, not only have I launched an entirely new charity organization for Magic the Gathering, which you can find out more about by messaging me, but I've also decided to tip my toes, anyway, I am going back gently into the world of streaming. I'm going to be launching something on my Twitch stream called Calrissian's Card Room, which I'm going to hold hopefully until... hopefully the Disney lawyers are not going to come after me. I've been told that is acceptable use of these things. But basically, it's going to be me playing card games while talking to folks about Star Wars stuff or superhero ethics stuff or whatever on my mind as a way to distract you from the fact that I'm not very good at the games I'm playing. Those games will mostly be poker and Magic the Gathering. Who knows? Maybe someone will teach me Pokemon online. I really, really doubt it, but...
I mean, your co-host for the Rebels...
Yeah, no, he does. I don't think what he does is a card game though. He does Pokemon Go, which I don't.
Okay, yeah, no, you're right.
I don't know if I understand, but
I don't know what either one are, except that they are different things, and one,
Anyway,
something about collectible.
We're going to be talking about poker. We're talking about Magic the Gathering. I have no idea what the schedule is yet, but if you go to twitch.com, I think it's the Ethical Panda, but the link is in the show notes, and subscribe, you'll get notifications. I'm going to try hard to, if I can, I don't want to at least be like, hey, I'm going online in 3 minutes. It might just be like, hey, I'm going online tomorrow night, or I'm going online in 6 hours. Who knows what I'm going to do? Eventually I'll settle into a recording schedule, but you can get it on the ground floor. Say that you were there before everyone else, because that's what the cool kids are doing.
Yeah.
And, hey, Aaron, you shot
pressure.
Exactly. Anyway, thanks everybody for being a part of this. Paul and Aaron, you are fantastic as always. I do not have time for Patreon content, which I apologize. I've been not great about that. We're going to get back into that habit very, very soon. We've been mostly in that habit. Why am I complaining about too much? But anyway, thank you all, everybody, much. Have a good one. Because we have spoken.